speaking of checking out, we got Jaylen Johnson, we got Teradja Mitchell. Steve, you can go ahead on. Of course, Teradja Mitchell was a guy that was supposed to be counted upon way back.
Way back, yeah. I did a survey on our site. Our friend Dan Hope over at 11 Warriors does a thing about snap counts, and I consulted with him, and he was fine with me taking his research and using it for a story on our site, and I cited it back to him and linked him as well to be completely fair and transparent that he provided the information for the story. But Ohio State, in my analysis, had 18 guys who are in their second, third, fourth, or fifth year that still have at least 1 year of eligibility left. Even the fifth-year guys have that super senior year from COVID that maybe a few of them could come back next year. 18 guys who played less than 10% of the snaps on offense or defense. I didn't look at special teams, didn't care about special teams. Guys come to play on offense, guys come to play on defense. And you had 18 guys who were, I'd consider upperclassmen. I left the freshmen out because it's too early to make a determination about whether, I didn't say so-and-so is going to transfer because he didn't get to play. I just shared with you, the reader at home, these are the guys, 18 of them, who played less than 10% of the snaps all season long on offense or defense. And these are the guys who you would figure would be susceptible to a transfer situation. And Teradja Mitchell was one of them. Jaylen Johnson didn't play all season. He may have been banged up a little bit. He's from Cincinnati LaSalle, so that one hurts a little bit. An Ohio guy from a program that has produced some talent over the years, LaSalle. But, it is what it is. I think if they only lose a couple more guys into the portal, which, they probably will between now and the end of this window. It's a 45-day window, I believe, where guys can enter the portal at this point. And some of them may be committed to stay through the playoff at this point and finish the season. But I think they're going to come out with a net gain when it's all said and done. And positions I would look at, I think with Cam Brown leaving, you got to have a starting corner perhaps out of the or at least somebody who's going to push Hancock and J.K. Johnson for starting time. I think with Zach Harrison leaving, you need an impact defensive end. I love JT Tuimoloau. I like Jack Sawyer. But that's two guys. You need 4 or 5 war daddies up front, maybe a defensive tackle as well. Beyond that, you're losing probably both tackles, DeJuan Jones and Paris Johnson, I would think, to the NFL. Could use an offensive tackle. You figure Josh Fryer may have one of those spots. If you could have a plug-and-play like they had with the kid from Rutgers, was it Jonah Jackson? Was that a few years ago. A plug-and-play offensive lineman, I think, would definitely help the situation. Matthew Jones may leave as well, although you've got Enoch Vamahi who could step right in there. So those are my initial thoughts on the transfer portal. People are wringing their hands about it. There's already 1,000 guys in there. Somebody said that there's 85 guys at 130 schools, so like 12 or 13,000 players, maybe nationally or whatever, and 1,000 of them are in the portal or something. So, good luck to all those in the portal, I guess. And the grass is always greener on the other side of the septic tank.
The portal isn't a bad thing. It's not a great thing in terms of the lack of oversight and how some of the things are working. It isn't great in terms of there are going to be a lot of kids that are going to enter the portal only never to come out, or at least not to another school. But for a school like Ohio State, it's easier to be able to keep the natural churn going on. You through past years have had guys that have just sat through the program. I mean, it's just kind of one of those situations. Now you can go and address recruiting misses and some things like that. I mean, I'm not here to sit there and say that it's not a case of that somebody would never be ushered into the portal. It's like, you're going to the portal, but I think that there's some guys that need that shove out of the nest sometimes a little bit. So we'll see. And I'm not saying that was the case with Jaylen Johnson or with Teradja Mitchell, but there will be more. There certainly will be more names. And no, I'm not sitting on names and protecting them, but we know that there will be more names, and then we'll see what Ohio State's able to do, because obviously the Buckeyes are going to need to replace some key people and have some stop gaps because of some misses in terms of recruiting.
One quick thing before we go, and not a surprise, looks like Jeff Brom going to Louisville. So I think there's a candidate out there for Purdue, a former Purdue defensive coordinator who knows the state of Indiana recruiting, who is currently the head coach at Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman.
People are already trying to put Jim Leonard in there. I just don't know how quickly you go from an offensive-minded head coach to a defensive-minded head coach at a program like that. I mean, there's going to need to be some reshaping of the roster and some philosophies or whatever. I'm a big fan of offensive-minded head coaches. I think that you can find somebody to run your defense. If I were an AD putting together a coaching search, most of my attention would be on offensive-minded coaches.
I consider that an upgrade going from Satterfield to Braum. Cincinnati taking Satterfield. I don't know how well that's going to work out going into the Big 12. To be honest with you, I would have liked, and I know he's a retread, but at this point, I would have taken Matt Campbell, who at least knows the Big 12 and also has Ohio ties a little bit. I maybe would have gone that route, but I don't know. Cincinnati was in a tough spot going into the new conference, and it's going to be very competitive. Even with Texas and Oklahoma eventually leaving, it's going to be extremely competitive. TCU is a program, that's way up there now. Oklahoma State consistently wins 9 or 10 games, so Oklahoma, well, they're leaving, but there's some other really good programs there, and Kansas State and Baylor, and a few others, but. I have no idea what direction Purdue is going to go with that. I think Jim Leonard, kind of makes some sense. I guess he's breaking away from Wisconsin altogether, maybe after the bowl game here. So who is the head coach for them in the bowl game? Doesn't sound like he's going to be the head coach for the bowl game even.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Want to touch on this David Greenshield super chat from earlier in the show. How big of an issue has the D-line rotation been? I think there have been drives this year where you don't even have to look at the defensive line to know who is playing defensive line at those positions. And I think there have been issues there where it's like a lot of guys are playing that necessarily shouldn't be playing. And along with Zach Harrison leaving, you're also losing Javonte Jean-Baptiste and Tyler Friday as two more seniors. And those guys have been just guys basically throughout their career, and they take up reps. They allow Zach Harrison and JT Tuimoloau out to get a rest, but they haven't really necessarily given much more than that. And on the interior, Jerron Cage has been around forever, a 6th-year guy, and you're going to be losing him. And I think those guys haven't played their best at times this year, and they're generally they're on their way out, and Ohio State still has to replace those guys. But I think the Mike Hall being injured has also been a thing, and he's been injured for most of the season. And so that's one of the reasons that he's not been out there as much. Tyleik Williams, is it a concern that you're still having issues of a guy staying in shape, being in shape, getting in shape 2 years into his career?
Yeah, I think that as you watch the rotation there, I think that you had 4 or 5 mainstay guys, and you probably always needed to have at least 2 or 3 of them on the field at the same time, and then you could hide the 4th guy to give somebody a blow. But too often we were seeing where they're trotting 3 in and trotting 3 out, and the 3 you're trotting in aren't anywhere near as good as the 3 you're trotting out. So, yeah, I agree. I'm not sure if there's going to be a changing of the guard at that coaching position or not after this season. Remains to be seen. Is Larry Johnson Jim Knowles' guy? The results here with the pass rush haven't been all that great. So I don't know. That to me, they've got to come up with something there.